The document hit the table. 3 labs, 31 pages, $1.8 million cleared. Nora didn't argue. She held the vial to the light, watched the air above it, and said, "The certification was right. It just wasn't right about what matters." Some truths only evaporate if you know how to watch them go. The vial is smaller than you'd expect for something worth $1.8 million. It sits on a white examination table inside a Geneva brokerage house, late afternoon, in the kind of light that makes everything look more expensive than it already is. The ventilation has been shut down to protect volatile compounds. The air doesn't move. The vial doesn't move. The man standing across the room from it hasn't moved in several minutes. His name is Mikhail Drenov, Senior Acquisitions Agent for House of Vasari. Mid-50s, tailored, standing very straight because sitting would mean admitting he's worried. The money has already moved. Contracts are signed. House of Vasari's entire autumn collection has been built around what's inside that vial. Bulgarian Rose Absolute, certified by 3 independent European laboratories, authenticated through gas chromatography and mass spectrometry, confirmed across 31 immaculate pages with official seals. The documentation is unimpeachable. Mikhail holds it the way a man holds a life jacket, not as evidence, as comfort. He checks his phone, then checks it again, sets it face down. A door opens. No announcement. The woman who enters is carrying a worn leather satchel and wearing no lanyard, no badge, no clipboard. She's the kind of person whose authority arrives before her resume does. She glances at the vial first, then at Mikhail, then briefly at the room's corners, the way someone does when they're reading a space, not just occupying it. She doesn't introduce herself. She sets her bag down slowly and says, "Has anyone opened it today?" Mikhail tells her yes, the certification team, that morning. She nods once. Something moves across her expression, barely visible, quickly contained. She doesn't explain it. Mikhail presents the certification report with a slight edge, directed at no one in particular, aimed somewhere in her direction. 3 independent laboratories, he says. Every metric inside tolerance. Nora takes the report, reads 2 pages, sets it down gently. "The machines aren't wrong," she says. Then a pause that lasts just long enough to change the meaning of everything that follows. That's actually the problem. She uncaps the vial. She doesn't smell it immediately. She holds it at a distance and watches the air above the opening, watching the way you watch a fire, looking for what the shape of it tells you before you feel the heat. Bulgarian Rose in proper condition releases in layers, she says, almost to herself. The first wave should feel like the inside of a warm room. This one leads with the window. Mikhail doesn't understand. He glances at the certification report, back at Nora. His jaw tightens a fraction. She sets the vial down. She doesn't write anything. Then she asks who transported the shipment. Mikhail names a logistics firm, then stops, corrects himself, names a different one. She doesn't react. She files it. "What was the temperature during transit?" she asks. He reaches for his phone, scrolls too long. "Within spec," he finally says. Single syllable. She moves on. She opens her satchel and removes a small reference vial, dark glass, old wax seal, labeled by hand in Bulgarian Cyrillic. She holds both vials at the same height and studies them against the light. The color difference is almost imperceptible. Almost. "Rose Absolute should run close to burgundy at this concentration," she says. "This reads closer to garnet." The lab confirmed color within. "Yes, it is within range." A pause. "That's not what I said." Her name is Nora. Here is the thing about Rose Absolute, and about any complex aromatic oil that the instruments measure correctly and still manage to miss. Imagine you baked bread. perfect crust, correct weight, and if you sent a sample to a laboratory, they would confirm that the flour, salt, and water ratios are exactly right. But you left the dough sitting in a warm car for 6 hours before you ever turned the oven on. The bread is still bread. The chemistry still passes. But any baker who has done this 1,000 times knows something cooked wrong. The gluten structure shifted. The yeast exhausted itself in the wrong sequence. The numbers are fine. The bread is not quite right. But Rose Absolute is one of the most chemically intricate substances in commercial perfumery. Over 300 identified aromatic compounds in a single oil, each one with a different molecular weight, a different boiling point, a different tendency to evaporate when exposed to heat or oxygen. The lightest, most fragile of those molecules, the ones responsible for the oil's top character, its first impression, its sense of living warmth, those evaporate first, always. Under heat, under pressure, over time, they leave. What remains is still chemically rose, still passes every static test you can run, still falls within every documented tolerance. The laboratory instruments are not lying to you. They're just answering a different question than the one you needed to ask. What Nora describes, what she calls Protocol 04, a Terpene Fugacity Gradient Analysis, is the difference between a photograph and a film. Gas chromatography takes a snapshot. Here is what is present, here is how much. Fugacity mapping watches a process unfold. Here is how the oil releases over time. Here is what it gives first and what it withholds. Two different instruments, two different questions, both scientifically valid. Only one of them tells you what a master perfumer will experience at the moment of opening. The labs weren't wrong, Nora says quietly. They answered correctly. They were just asked the wrong question. Mihail sits down. It's the first time. Nora reaches into her satchel again and removes something wrapped in cloth, a glass instrument, hand-blown, clearly decades old. A diffusion sleeve, custom-made, designed by a Bulgarian distiller in the 1970s specifically to observe terpene release behavior without electronic interference. An analog tool for a question that predates the machines. Mikhail stares at it. Where did you get that? His granddaughter. She trained under him. A pause. I trained under her. The certification report is still on the table. It looks, somehow, thinner than it did 10 minutes ago. She introduces both oils into the sleeve simultaneously. They watch. The reference oil, the old wax seal, the Cyrillic label, blooms slowly, deliberately, in a structured sequence you can almost read like a sentence. The certified oil opens fast, spends itself quickly, then flattens. The difference is not dramatic. It doesn't need to be. Authority has changed hands in this room. No announcement was made. No confrontation occurred. Just a glass instrument, 2 vials, and a woman who knows precisely what she is watching. Then she pauses. The oil is genuine Bulgarian Absolute. I want to be clear about that. Mihail exhales. His hand moves toward the report. It's just not this harvest, and it wasn't stored correctly. His exhale stops mid-breath. His phone lights up on the table. The House of Vasari production team is waiting on final confirmation. They need to begin batch integration within 4 hours or the window closes. The autumn collection timeline becomes irreversible. His voice changes register, from defensive to something closer to desperate. Can we blend it? The certification will still hold. The certification will hold, Nora agrees. That's not the question. The question is whether your master perfumer will smell what I smelled in the first 30 seconds. A silence. Could you be wrong? She considers this genuinely, which is its own kind of answer. I could be wrong about the harvest year. I'm not wrong about the gradient. She recaps the vial, slides it gently across the table toward him. Smell it tomorrow morning, first thing, before coffee, before anything else, and then remember what you smelled today. There are some tests she cannot run for him. There are some conclusions a person has to arrive at inside their own body, in their own time, with no instrument between them and the thing they're trying to understand. Mikhail pauses the batch integration. He requests a second sourcing review, specifically using Protocol 04 Fugacity Analysis. House of Vasari does not cancel the acquisition. They do not confirm it. $1.8 million sits in suspension, neither lost nor secured, waiting on a question that 3 certified laboratories were never asked to answer. Somewhere, the directors of those laboratories will never know this conversation happened. Their results were correct. Their methods were sound. The system worked exactly as it was designed to work. And that, the fact that the system worked perfectly and still arrived at an incomplete answer, is the most uncomfortable part of the whole afternoon. The logistics discrepancy, the firm Mikhail almost named before he caught himself and named a different one, was never fully explained. Nora noted it, filed it somewhere behind her eyes, left it unresolved and said nothing more about it. Whether someone knew the oil had degraded before it arrived in Geneva, whether the routing changed after the fact, whether the transit records would bear that weight, those questions left the room with her, unanswered, unhurried. At the door, she pauses, doesn't turn around. Machines measure what we tell them to measure, she says. The hard part is knowing what question to ask before you turn them on. She leaves. The vial stays on the table. The certification document sits beside it, perfectly ordered, completely correct, every seal intact, every number confirmed. And somehow, no longer enough.